we very efficient and very candid, very efficient in how do we translate those projects into something that is more long-term or into the future. So we may know, okay, we may have here in Antigua or say, for example, right here in St. Lucia, but how is that data feeding into a regional system that we can build that picture? And climate change is we can hardly sit very comfortably in just speaking to climate change in a specific location. If we are to really articulate climate change, it has to be done at the regional level. And therefore, all these efforts need to somehow find a way as to how we can link them up to present that bigger picture. And I think the other thing too is that while I don't want to belabor the point on research, what we're finding is that research has been done quite ad hoc. And then, for example, we are very much accustomed in putting policy forward with little or no science because we really do not have the science. And sometimes where we do have it is very hardly cited. So I think this is where our challenge lies in terms of bringing that science base into our policy making.
And I'll let Antigua respond if there's any further thought on that.
Yeah, just on that note, I think I agree with the ad hoc approach. You know, there is, once events happen, then we sort of think, well, we should. But I think that there's even a disconnect between we should have done something to translate it into, okay, well, let's do this in the future, so to mitigate potential effects. For example, waiting for, collecting the data and waiting for a window of opportunity. I mean, we don't want to take advantage of or use in a negative way rainfall events that cause landslides, but at the same time, those are opportunities. We're underestimating the amount of rainfall that we're planning for in our development, and here's what we recommend based on this. So really taking it a step forward in terms of getting the data about the events that are happening and translating policies that will affect how we're doing these. And the implementation, my colleague Anne-Marie just said, policy and implementation. Thank you.
So do you see, as Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson said in his quote, people cherry-picking the consensus of observation and experiment? Do you think that if we were to provide more data and more climate information to policymakers, that they might not necessarily use that information, even if they can understand it? Do you see that there's any of that cherry-picking going on in the region, or is there a pretty broad consensus that this is happening because of whatever factors, and it's simply about adapting and mitigating future impacts?
I think for us, our colleagues from OECS here, we're thinking that I don't think in the region that there is a cherry picking, because we are at the brunt of climate change. We are facing it every day. We're in the front line. So it's that consensus that, listen, climate change is here. We don't even have that luxury to cherry pick. So that has been done by the powers be it that actually are able to control or somehow influence the discussion on how do we move on that global front to respond to climate change as is required. That is, how do we reduce our footprint? So I think in a region here, we would say that there is little or no cherry picking.
So
we would love to hear from our member states as to what they think, though.
Because I think, just to make another comment, that I think we spend so much time in recovery mode, from especially every year since 2002. I think Dr. Val Gonzalez said in a speech recently. Every year there's some kind of system passing in the region, and we are constantly in recovery mode. We have landslides we are dealing with from 4 years back. Some countries much longer than that. We have poverty issues, some people losing jobs since Hurricane Ivan took place in in Grenada in early 2000. So it's very hard for us, even we lose our coast from wave battering the coastlines, and people are seeing beaches that are destroyed. And so for us, as Dr. Singh is saying, that we don't see cherry picking at all. We feel the impacts every day, and we are constantly battling.
Yeah, and also if I can add a dimension to put this into perspective, when you look at our economic sectors, we rely on the coastal resources. The same resources that climate change is another factor that is impacting to the many other issues that we have. For example, land-based sources of pollution in general, and all the other biodiversity impacts. So we are there. That is a component that is being placed upon us. Is an added burden on our ecosystems, our critical ecosystems that drive our economies, and that is tourism to a large extent.
I think essentially the evidence is there, but I suppose it's to capture it in sort of the universal, the accepted scientific way, so that that communication can happen at the international level, so that at that level it can be demonstrated what we already know to be a fact.
Antigua, I see 3 faces.
On the cherry picking note, I think I agree that we don't cherry pick the impact that we understand we're having, but there is an amount of cherry picking where you, on a national level, what you respond to and what you take account of. For example, there is still development to fill in the marsh and build a hotel on it. And that's happening throughout the region because, as you say, that's a really valuable land. So while we don't cherry pick what we sea level rise and the rainfall and that acidification, those effects, I think there is some level, as I mentioned, on the national sort of development strategy that we're willfully ignoring.
I totally agree with you. I think we do cherry pick on our response, but I think at times, one of the discussion I think that we really need to have seriously is how do we now incorporate climate change? Because guys, let's face it, climate change is here to stay with us for a little while, all right? And how do we start inputting climate change concerns and impact into our developmental pathway? And I think that is a conversation that we are not having. And that is why we're seeing our valuable ecosystems like a mangrove ecosystem that is there to buffer from climate change is being used for hotel construction, because the argument is that, look, what do? Do you create jobs or do you keep a mangrove? And those decisions as small island states we are always forced to make. And how do we reconcile that is often maybe not done in the way that we as environmentalists want it to happen. But I think that conversation needs to start, be given a greater importance and priority.
Can I ask a question? Do you see that as the consensus around climate change builds and becomes stronger, that there's any sort of a shift in those priorities? Do you see a shift away from more weight being put on tourism and income from development versus protection and development of resilience measures?
Well, I suppose the question is, it's almost a matter of survival. I guess as a policymaker, you ask, do I try to survive now, or do I preserve and try to survive 50 years from now? If I don't survive now, I'll not be around 50 years from now. So these are the type of decisions that have to be made, and I suppose that's where we have to look at those.
Yes, but from a political perspective, when we talk about how we develop and surviving now, people have to survive now, and policy ultimately we're geared to jobs and survival today. The electorate they want work, they want to see things happening today. Yes, we want to survive tomorrow, but I think that we tie the politicians can't their tie, because in as much as we want to put things in place and we'll have something tomorrow, people are calling out for something today. And I think that's the gap that we have to bridge when we're going forward. But I think, honestly, even though that may be true, I also believe that if we inform the masses and we go about it in a strategic manner, then they will be less inclined to push their politicians over the edge to make certain decisions. And I think generally there is power in number. If we look at the whole region and we put everything in perspective and even begin to look at it from that level where policy is concerned, where science is concerned, where you have a comprehensive information that is put forward, that you can see this is what's happening across the board, and we take this out of a microcosm, then it makes it a lot more easy and palatable for the masses to understand and support the decisions at a higher level.
But ultimately, that puts the onus back on us to put that information out there to inform the masses how much education we're doing, how much public awareness we're doing, so that people can ultimately say, yes, I want these things, but we're willing to sacrifice now for later. It has to be, the people have to want it, and the only way for them to do it is for us to do our jobs and make sure that they know.
And just to round this out, we should be closing out the conversation in a minute or two, but I wanted to see if St. Kitts or Nevis had any final remarks.
I think this is a difficult subject. The climate change issue is like a two-edged sword. We have the technocrats who should be obeying the regulations, and then the politicians who drive the policy. So they too have to provide for the masses as well. So yes, there needs to be some compromise. We provide the education, but yes, we still have to ensure that we have sustainability for the years ahead. Which is a very difficult issue. We can't do anything else to ensure that we have a win-win situation. But
For a long time, and they will continue to do that.
it has to be ongoing.
They have no brains.
I hear some chatter at OECS, but I'm just going to ask Nevis if any further St. Kitts, any other responses? Okay.
A brief point on the how much are our the high level approach to this is that this year we had in September that largest gathering of heads of state and heads of government around climate change, and that was in September at the United Nations headquarters. And so using opportunities like that where it's on the rhetorical level, which I'm an optimist and I like to think that that's the first step in getting that to policies and actually talking about in this conversation.
Great. Yeah, there's some very important conversations coming up next month, next year. So, and small island developing states will, as you know, will be on the agenda and one of the priority areas for adaptation. So, the focus for adaptation. So, it's important that your voice is heard, and so we appreciate you participating in this. Hopefully it was fun and educational in some way, and I think if we can get the technical aspects of this worked out, this might actually be a way we could communicate to discuss other topics as well. So thank you for being part of our inaugural Google Hangout on climate change.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, Christina. We are happy to be part of this discussion. We hope we can have some more in this type of forum.
Yes. And thank you to